might not sin against you.
Amen.
When you're feeling down, when you're tempted to wonder what the point of life is, that's when Scripture really comes in, and it makes a difference. That's the end of the show, but we'd like to end with with all of us singing Amazing Grace. And I think everybody knows that song. If not, wing it, pretend like you do. Move your lips, and none of us will know the difference.
Sing solo where we can't hear you.
That's what they asked me to do.
Closing thoughts that I personally have. I gotta say, I love being with you guys.
Amen.
You guys are inspiration, your motivation, you're encouraging to me. That's interesting. I went over and I got my nose in a book for a class I'm taking, and I'm watching you guys out there in the pool, swimming around. And I'm watching you going across the little jungle gym, the monkey bars thing, climbing up over the slide like my kids did, and like I did. Fearless. You know, that takes courage.
Amen.
Too many people, you know, we get, something goes wrong in our lives and we hang it up. We sit on the couch and we feel sorry for ourselves. But you guys aren't doing that.
Amen.
You haven't done that. You know, sometimes we all get to the point where it's like, man, life is so hard. But you know, I look around and I say, man, I don't have anything to complain about. I really don't even have any challenges. Really, there's people that are dealing with a whole lot more than I've ever dealt with. Keep being the encouragement that you are. The talents that you guys have shared here tonight, share those with people around you.
Amen.
It'll bring hope, it'll bring joy to them, and then blessing others, you're going to be more blessed yourself than you could possibly bless anybody else. Keep your faith, keep your courage. Yep, watching you guys come down the hills, skiing. I know people that have got their full sight and they wouldn't touch that for nothing. It's awesome. You guys are an inspiration and you're amazing. I love being your bus driver. And I think, you have some closing comments, or what do you want to do?
Well, I think that was a wonderful program. Does anybody else want to do something? Okay, Jamie?
Jamie?
Would it be possible for me to talk about the gratitude that I have?
Go ahead. turn around this way, most of the crowd is this way.
Face this way, Jamie. Lift your voice. Project your voice.
One of the things that means a lot to me is gratitude, and to me, I feel that that God wants us to be grateful for what He gives us, because I honestly believe that the more good things we have and the more thankful we are for what we have, I honestly believe that God will give us more.
Amen.
And I just wanted to say, to also thank each and every one of you for the warm reception that you gave my good friend Larry, because of
Amen.
what he's going through. That means a lot to me, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Amen.
All right, Armando's got a few things he'd like to say.
First and foremost, I want to thank Larry and Myrna for working with me, because coming from California, it's not easy to arrange the finances, transportation, and things that you people here take for granted, such as you guys can call up a friend, you guys can call up Larry, and for me, I have to work 3 times as hard just to get here. So I want to thank each and every one of you for accepting me, for having me here, for being part of the videos. There is a young lady out there, and several people on Facebook land, that I have no problem doing all those videos. So I hope those people out there, and I know that I'm being recorded, so I hope those people on Facebook really enjoy what I have to offer. And my testimony is this: you guys have heard my story, where I come from and whatnot, but what you guys have not heard was how I came here. And I don't mean financially, I don't mean jumping on American Airlines, I don't mean none of that. There is more to what you guys don't know that I'm willing to share here in front of each and every one of you, and that is this. So I was born in 81. My real dad was shot in 82. And in 83, I came down with a nasty sickness. Nobody knew what it was in Mexico, because we lived in Mexico back then. Even though I was born here, but my family moved back to Mexico for a bit. I won't spare you guys with the details, but needless to say, yours truly wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for the fact that the doctors in Mexico said, your child's gonna die, and you either get him out of here or he's not gonna make it. So if it wasn't for the quick actions of my mom, and or at the time, what I would effectively call my dad, also known as my sister's dad, I wouldn't be here in front of you guys. So I want to thank each and every one of you for accepting me for who I am, and I hope to see you guys all in the near future.
Next, I think Oliver would like to share his testimony too, or something. Thank you, Armando.
Okay, I'm new here, and frankly, it seemed like you folks know each other a whole lot better than, I know you. So I thought I'd just share a few words of introduction of who I am, where I'm coming from, and what my life is all about, what I've experienced in my ups and downs. I'll try to be short, okay? Basically, I grew up in Budapest, Hungary. My parents lived through the Second World War, and I was born in 1947. A year later, my father wanted to bring the whole family out of Budapest, Hungary, because of communism. Communism basically is where everybody shares everything, but everybody lives under fear behind the Iron Curtain, where they don't have any freedom. And there's a lot of fear about talking, because there's secret police that can turn you in if you talk against government, or if you don't have a job. By the way, you have to have a job, and you have to have a place to live. It's illegal not to have a job. It's illegal not to have a place. So that's a contrast between what I'm experiencing here in America, where there are homeless and jobless people that can be running on the street and being a nuisance. But anyway, I was 1 year old when my father wanted to leave the country. The reason he wanted to leave the country, he did not see any future under communism. Evidently, both of my parents spoke French and German besides Hungarian, so they were international minded to begin with. So I grew up in this well, I'm jumping ahead, but my parents could not agree about whether they should go or they should leave. So they had to come to a decision on whether to stay or go. So they decided that my father and my sister would leave and leave my mother and my older brother behind. The reason was because my mother was fearful about being caught and possibly shot or, put into prison just for, leaving the country. It was like refugees. Well, anyway, they did leave. I didn't know my father because obviously I grew up without my father in a single parent home. I do want to add that my mother was a Catholic and my father was a Protestant. So there was some incompatibility, I'm sure you can understand, unequally yoked and so forth.
Amen.
Well, anyway, staying behind with my mother, my brother was sent to a boarding school, to a Catholic boarding school in Hungary. So actually, I stayed with my mother who was working. She was a teacher all her life and teaching French and German. So I grew up in a apartment that I felt very lonely. I really missed my father and my sister. But anyway, I did have nightmares most of the time, and it was just amazing for me. And one day, after terrible screams and whatever, cold sweat waking up, where I have actually seen two angels that calmed me down, gave me peace, and delivered me from fear. Fear of, the dream that was tormenting me. Now, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead because looking from hindsight, what I've experienced with those angels, I really believe now, I never talked to anybody about this, but somebody just asked me about those angels, what they were, what they meant, or how, why I think such a big deal about it. They kind of remind me of my children that was born many, many years ago in the 70s. So I don't know whether there's any truth to it or not, but my children, my daughter and my son, does remind me of my children before they were born. I don't know how biblical this is or not, but I'm trying to make sense of it myself. Well, anyway, 6 years later, when I was in 1953, my mother wanted to leave the country. I was 6 years old, and she sold all the furniture that she had in the apartment and gave it to this man who promised to lead her out of the country. What happened was, he happened to be a secret agent. He turned her in, and she had to spend 6 months in prison while I was in the apartment by myself. I remember going to the first grade by myself. Oh, I want to say that my mother would brag on me, which really made me cringe because I didn't like to get her attention, that I would have a key hung around my neck that I would walk to kindergarten when I was 3 years old. So I just remember walking on those concrete sidewalks by my lonesome. So I don't know whether it has anything to do with being blind or not, but I kind of felt blind, just feeling my way back and forth to school. In other words, I just kept going without even remembering, what my surroundings were or whatever. But as a result, my mother really was cautioning me not to let anybody into the apartment if they knock or whatever, because she was frightened at that time about me being kidnapped. So the reason I'm saying to you, because I grew up under not only communist fear, but my mother also had a lot of fear or paranoia. So in other words, I was maybe overprotected or whatever. And you probably wonder how I survived. It really was the landlady who took me in, and maybe there was a support system, or maybe I don't remember. All I know is that somehow I was fed. Oh, I know. I had to go to kindergarten and school, and there they fed me. So that's how I survive. But anyway, it's been a very lonely way for me to grow up, and it wasn't until 1956. I don't know how many of you know anything about the Hungarian Revolution. In 1956, that was under Eisenhower's time, where I and my mother, just one day, from one day to the next, she found out that there was, during the turmoil, the Hungarian students wanted to get rid of the Russian tanks and the Russian occupation, and it lasted for about 2 weeks and unfortunately failed. So my mother had to decide overnight, just leave the country, just carrying whatever we could. It was scary, by the way. I wasn't informed about, in other words, I was kept in ignorance or darkness of politics or, social activities and whatever. There was no radio, no television, no books, no magazines, no telephone, and my mother actually didn't even have anybody come and visit, our house. For some reason, she was overprotective, or maybe she wasn't, that social, or she didn't trust anybody, because, like I said, she didn't want me to say anything to anybody in case I gave her away. She went through a lot of suffering. So anyway, in 1956, October, when my brother and the two of us, my mother and I, left Hungary, we walked across the border at night. So it was kind of scary, and the only way we knew that we were in Austria by hiding behind some wheat, where we were watching the license plates on the car, whether it was Austrian or Hungarian. I don't remember how long we were in Austria, but all I can tell you is I got to give credit for, or thanks for, the American government who provided the air transportation from München to come to America at that time for me to, get to know my father. Sad to say, within 1 year, my mother and father could not see eye to eye. We didn't speak any English at that time, and she left my father. Again, I'm thinking of incompatibility. They could not see eye to eye, so they didn't communicate for one reason or another. I was sent to a boarding school for 8 years, a Catholic boarding school, from the 4th grade on to the 11th grade. And I went to 2 different boarding schools. One was in New York State and one was in Massachusetts. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because during that time, I didn't feel, even though I was in a boys' boarding school, I didn't feel I had a home, either under communism, at least whatever, a functional, normal family home that I can relate to. And even in New York City, my mother was really scared of me running around or being with the wrong crowd or who knows what. That's the reason she put me in boarding school. But I didn't like it, okay? I didn't feel at home in the boarding school. It was under priests and brothers of charity and you name it, okay? So there was an opportunity for me to go to a home which I desired to go to when I was in my senior year in high school. That's where my older brother was at before he went to college. I was really following my older brother's footsteps into hopefully going to college after graduating from high school. So what happened was I left the boarding school in Massachusetts on my own to go to this Canandaigua Academy. I went from a boarding school that had 20 students in the class to over 200 students. So that was a big jolt, big transition for my life. For me to be with a co-ed education public school. Okay? I was in a Catholic boarding school and now I'm in a public school because I thought I had enough of religion and mass and priest and you name it, okay? I didn't think they would prepare me for college, so I had to get a big college prep education. And lo and behold, this was unusual for my mother to, at the same time that I went to this public school, my mother got a job teaching at that school. So in other words, I could not live with this family that I really wanted to because my mother got a job and I had to look after my mother to find an apartment and make arrangements to get to school and so forth. But anyway, that was a really jolting, unusual experience for me to live with my mother, which I wasn't used to living, okay? Anyway, I'm going forward. I became after getting to college, I was called up to serve in the military, and since I had a militaristic boarding school, I didn't feel like I needed to have any more military training or experience, you know, being shouted at or whatever. So I was a conscientious objector, and okay. The whole thing I'm trying to tell you is that I really appreciate this week with you, because I felt more at home than I ever have felt anywhere. Even when I was married, I didn't have that camaraderie, that pleasant environment, you know, the support system, or friends or relatives visiting us for one reason or another. And after being divorced for 40 years, just before I came here, I did find the answer for my concern on how to overcome incompatibility. And that's a new experience for me to share that for the first time. I can speak publicly to anywhere, to anybody. And I just want to say I really appreciate spending this time with you and being here under, you know, this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, all of you.